is Kinsella. Bray. The next station is Bray. This is the last stop. Please mind the gap.
So we start this time round with a bit of good news because Bray has got its aquarium back. The former Sea Life is now Marine Life. A subtle change of name, but there you go. On the seafront in Bray, right beside Finby's Coffee House. Good to get it back, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. I haven't been in it yet, but I have to say I'm very impressed by the shark outside it. Have you seen the shark?
No, I
it's
haven't,
really
no.
Good. If I was a kid, I'd be terrified. I thought it was wonderful.
Great, good.
It's
good
great because you do see school buses from all over the country used to pull up to the old one, and the new one, they spent so long on it. I can imagine what they've put into it.
2 years. It's been out of action for 2
yeah,
years.
Yeah, it looked great.
Yeah, and it's been reimagined and expanded, apparently.
Yeah.
So on that note, welcome to Bray Talking Heads. So it's Mark,
Pat,
And Leah.
and you're very welcome once again. And by the way, if you'd like to book tickets for Marine Life, you can do so at marinelifebray.ie, where you can pick the day and time slot that you'd like to go along. And if you do visit, maybe you'd let us know of your experience at our email address, which is braytalkingheads@gmail.com. Now, coming up a bit later in this episode, we're going to hear about the Save Bray campaign when we chat with Noeleen McManus about the concerns of that group in relation to possible flooding and the proposed building works on the old Bray Golf Club lands. Also, Leah here is going to let us know a little bit about the history of the former Quinn's Hotel on Main Street, Bray, which is now, of course, the Royal Hotel. But first to our radio archives, and this snippet coming up includes a former well-known local filmmaker who regularly made lovely bilingual wildlife programmes for RTE, and a local vet who these days might be called a celebrity vet. Nowadays, Bray is well serviced with veterinary practices, but Pat, that wasn't always the case, was it?
No, there wasn't many vets when I think back to the 70s or whatever, as far as I can remember. But there was one well-known vet. There is Pete Wetterborn now, who's well-known. But back in the day, there was a guy who lived just at the Circle K Bright Motors garage there, is at the start of Bray, on the corner at the roundabout, just before you headed over to, say, Woodbrook or over onto the N11. And in a big house there was the vets. That was John Wilson.
Yeah, and John, actually, he did a TV show called Pet World. I was involved in that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and well known, and he was a great talker. And I, at the time, was doing a radio show on local radio in 1990 or thereabouts. And we had 2 guests on a week. And in this particular excerpt you're going to hear, I had John Wilson on with Éamon de Buitléar, who was the local wildlife filmmaker, and both of whom have passed on now. But this interview is interesting because they're talking about Bray back in the day. This is from, as I say, 36 years ago. John talks about working with cattle on Bray's Main Street, and Éamon talks about his experiences living in the Lower Dargle Road area.
In 1964, when I came here, one could do a complete day's testing with cattle, a complete day's work with cattle on the main street of Bray. There would have been somewhere in the region of 200 cattle in yards up and down the main street of Bray. That's from the town hall to Ravenswell Gate.
Cattle on the main street in Bray.
Yes, and that's in 1964. All those places that are converted into yards and shops and houses now, there were piggeries and there were all kinds of things happening in the actual town itself then at that stage. That's amazing how it's all changed.
So Bray at that time then was very much a country town.
It was a country town. It was a village where the people come into on a Saturday to do the shopping from Callery and from Roundwood, and that's when the big day was. And it amazed me the other day. I went down to buy some sheepware in the local hardware shop, and they hadn't got sheepware. Now Bray, to my view, was reared and it was built on the sheepware it sold to the lads in the mountains around the hills here. You know, isn't it crazy how things have changed?
Do you remember those days, Éamon?
I do. I remember 3 blacksmiths in Bray, and it was terrific to go in and watch Andy Devitt in the main street there with his leather apron, and we used to marvel at the muscles. And Andy was a bit of a show-off, and he loved people who come in and see the horses, and they just used to go in across the path and into this wonderful place where he had this fire, and we used to love getting a chance to blow the fire. But John was right, and I remember sitting on the wall once a month in the Dargle Valley watching all the cattle and sheep going down to the fair in the Fair Green in Bray. Unfortunately, that's built over now, which it should never have been.
Well, where was that?
That was just opposite the People's Park, behind St. Bridget's Terrace. And it was, I remember in fact going myself one morning with a goat, because when I was at school I had 6 goats, and my brother was fond of gardening, and of course gardening and goats don't go too well together, and the place was like a desert after a while with the goats. But there was a little farm. May Barton had a farm just next door to us, and there was Willie Stampton and then Mary who used to help around the place. And we used to go in and milk cows and go on if you've said to a young fellow today or a young one that you went on a hay bogey, they wouldn't even know
what you're talking about.
They wouldn't know what a hay bogey was. And if you said to them, he made a hames of it, they wouldn't know what a hames was. They wouldn't know that it was something off a horse's collar.
Well, I didn't know that either.
There you are, and that you were making a mess of something. You know, I mean, that was something that you use every day of the week if you were talking to somebody.
Do you realise that you and I are becoming dinosaurs?
I do know, and in fact people think that I have been filming since the end of the Ice Age, which is 10,000 years ago.
Tell me, John, then your practice must have been very much farm practice, was it?
100% farm practice, absolutely.
Touch of the James Herriot.
It was James Herriot up on the hills with all those wonderful people. Glencree, Glencullen, Roundwood, Callery, Newtown, Mount Kennedy, Kilcool, all that area. Fabulous, wonderful, marvellous people. And there was one lady up at the far end of Glencree, and on a wet winter's day, no matter, if you're up that way at all, you always swung up there, up into the little cottage, and there was always homemade soda bread made on a griddle, and there was always a big cup of tea and homemade butter and something like blackberry jam or something, and you'd sit in there beside the fire, and happened a bit you'd want to move. It was great. They're such hospitable people, although around Christmas it was always a bad place to go, because every one of them insisted on pouring out a tumbler of whiskey for you.
So you were serving that whole area from Bray, were you?
Yeah. A wonderful, beautiful area.
And I remember Callery at that time, you'd see teal and snipe, and it was quite the bog there was quite
absolutely
wet.
alive
with game.
Yeah.
It was absolutely beautiful. It was a wonderful place to go.
Not so now, no?
Well, it's a lovely place to go, but it doesn't have the same wildlife that it used to have at that time. It's closer to Dublin. People have cars that can be out in a short while, and of course it's under far more pressure now with the easy accesses as well. And the place has of course been reclaimed and drained, so it's not the damp wet bogland that it used to be, so that changes the habitat and changes the wildlife as well.
So that's from 1990 there. And do you remember Éamon de Buitléar's lovely voice?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
And a Muffin Spear.
A Muffin Spear, bilingual wildlife program.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Did somebody draw, was there, when it was happening, the film on TV?
There were little animated
Yes,
there
was. What was his name? I can't remember either.
Was it Garrett Van Gendel?
It was
Garrett Van Gelden.
Yes, Garrett Van Gelden,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But their recall about the early 60s and Bray being a country town, amazing really, isn't it?
That is, but it's lovely to hear it, isn't it? Absolutely
and
lovely.
I remember, the cattle trucks pulling up sideways, and then opposite what's now Boots, there's a laneway opposite that.
That's right.
Obviously the centre is there, the town centre is there now, but there used to be Lochner's Butchers on one side and Caprani's on the other side, and then the truck would come, let down the barriers, and the pigs would be let in. I think it would say Wednesday or whatever, and you'd hear them all and
squealing. I remember the squealing.
Yeah, they knew their faith.
Indeed. I think it was John that mentioned Andy Devitt, the blacksmiths. Now I don't remember a blacksmith's in Bray. Do you?
There was, Mark. It was down Anvil's Lane.
You must be older.
Yeah, it was behind Anvil. It was behind Anvil on that little road there. What's it called again?
So Anvil's had a side door, and then next door.
Fatima Terrace.
Fatima Terrace.
That was the forge.
But there was another one down in Little Bray, if memory serves me, and there was was a...
Was that not a Saddler's, no?
Yeah, no, there
Foley's.
was... Maybe it was a Saddler's, maybe I'm wrong.
There was a
but
horse
there was
in the window,
That's
wasn't it?
right, that
Yeah.
was the horse in the window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do remember, and I think that forge has subsequently been knocked down, which would be shocking because it had the beautiful arch over it as well.
Wow. But anyway, I mean, and it's also worth mentioning the two things that I discovered. There's a Facebook page dedicated to John Wilson called John Wilson Pet World, and there's clips from Pet World. It's just hilarious to watch from the 80s, I think it was, or it must have been the 80s. And also, Éamon de Buitléar is obviously remembered with the de Buitléar Way, which is over Brayhead, a little walk you can do across Brayhead. I think it's about 4 kilometres long or so on. And anyway, those two interviewees are both passed on. John died in 2021 and Éamon in 2013. And I'm hoping to release many of these old archive interviews as podcasts in the new year. That's my New Year res.
I think that would be fantastic.
Fantastic
I think a lot
to hear
of people,
those voices back again. And back in the day, I just remember when dogs or cats went, they either had the mange or distemper. That was the only two things you could have wrong with them. And it was either...
It was the only two things. You never went to a vet if you could avoid it because it was too expensive.
A flip of the coin, whether the dog or cat can back out again. Now to think of all the... that they can have MRIs, they can have transplants.
They can have a CAT scan.
Boom, boom. No flies on you.
No, I just think it's crazy the amount of dogs there are in Bray now. And I just wonder, I mean, people are spending a lot on those dogs as regard food and whatever. But you just wonder, does everybody need a dog?
Well,
the
news, last week was the new dog wash. It's like a car wash system. Well, actually, it's not. I'll tell you what. It's down in Greystones beside the... I didn't want to mention the Cliff Walk, but it's near the end of the Cliff Walk, okay?
Don't mention the war.
And what it is, you pay in, use your card to pay into this thing. You bring the dog in, and there's a stainless steel bath and shower or whatever. And it's a bit like an automated car wash that you have up in, say...
do you get brushed as well?
Maxol. and you press it for shampoo, and you
get dewormed as well.
And you do all that stuff. And then there's a hairdryer built in, everything. And then but I can imagine people who love their pooches do that.
Oh, no, I'm sure they do.
Only in Greystones.
I'm sure they do. No, I'm sure it's
Hollywood.
going to happen in Bray. It's just a matter of time. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Anyway, can we talk about the many hotels that we have in Bray? You've been doing a bit of research into the history of the Royal Hotel, which was formerly Quinn's Hotel, Quinn with one N, because that was set up by John Quinn, wasn't it?
It was set up by a man called...
Established, I should say, not
William
set up.
Quinn, actually, not John Quinn.
Oh, was it William?
Right, it was William, 1766.
Whoa, that's a long time ago, isn't it?
It was a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And when it was originally set up, it was set up to facilitate the coach and horses that came through Bray to get out to some of the country estates, so the likes of Powerscourt and those, right? Mm-hmm. Because there would have been very few ordinary travellers. I mean, ordinary people stayed at home. They, to look after the cows and to look after whatever else they had. They didn't have the time or the money to go anywhere else. So it was very much for the gentry and maybe other people that had to travel, right? And it survived like that for a very, very long time because his son and his grandson took it over. Now, they were called John, right? So that's where the John comes in. And the courthouse that's opposite it, that was built opposite it so that the legal profession would have a place to go and eat at lunchtime, right? So that was the logic behind the building like that. I'm sure anybody that knows where the current courthouse would go, oh my God, wouldn't that have been a great plan for us, because they always seem to be under pressure. But it was quite interesting in the Quinn's day because it started out as something quite small, but then it was developed more and more as more people started to travel. And of course then with the arrival of the railway, it expanded hugely. And they did things like, because they were attracting more visitors, they built a walkway down to the seafront. So people could walk from the back of what's now the Royal Hotel down to the seafront.
Which would have been Sea Point Road
Sea Point, Queensborough. Yeah.
Okay.
So down there, so the people could take the sea air. Right? Because that's what you came out to Bray for. It was to get the sea air, to cleanse your lungs. Probably there was so much smoke and
smog,
etc. in Dublin that you needed to come out here.
And some famous people stayed there, didn't they? Charles Dickens, for example?
Charles Dickens and, oh my goodness, I've forgotten the name of the other gentleman.
Arthur
Conan Doyle. And there was another man.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And the other man, what was his name? He did the History of Travel of Ireland, the writer.
Thackeray,
James
William
Thackeray.
Yes.
Williams Thackeray.
Yeah.
He stayed there as well. But also people that were visiting Lord Meath and, that were
so
visiting
it was a well-to-do hotel.
Well-to-do, well-proportioned, well looked after hotel, seemingly with very good meals. So, lots of people would stay there. And
Queensborough Road was named, I think, after the Quinn family.
After the Quinn's family, that's correct. Because that was the original walk, not Sea Point, but that was the original walk.
Of course. Yeah. And then that's where they built all those lovely terraces and so on.
Absolutely.
But the corner, I remember reading that they developed the corner, what we would know as the Royal Corner. So it's gone now, really, in many ways, because there's a shop there now. But they made that curved. They curved the corner, which
was fabulous.
Yeah.
But the other thing that the Quinns did, right, was they set up hot and cold baths on the beach, because again that would have been done in the spas of Europe, the famous spas, right? You would have had hot and cold baths to relieve, rheumatoid arthritis and stuff like that, and it would be part of this health kick. In those days you didn't go to the gym, you came to Bray, right? But it has a long and very varied history, and it has been through so many different iterations. You'd be here for an hour and a half just going through that. But I suppose what's most important is that at one stage, when the fashionable flocked to Bray, it was the place to stay. And what's really sad now is I was just reading TripAdvisor about the Royal Hotel, and the first line is, what a kip.
Oh, no, really?
Which is awful, because Bray deserves one good hotel, one first-class hotel. And
since the demise of the International Hotel, which we will talk about again on this podcast. Yeah, the Royal. It was either the Royal or the International when I was growing up. They were the two.
The two big
hotels, weren't they?
Do you remember that it was called the Royal Starlight Hotel?
Oh, because that was the Starlight, which you can still see that floor, but I think it's bedrooms.
Yeah,
that was the Starlight disco.
That was a disco.
That
was a good
many
disco.
heart was broken and many a romance was started. I think.
With the DJ was Mick Taylor. I remember him. Yeah, he was great. He
was
played
he
great
from
music.
Shankill?
Shankill, yeah.
Yeah, I
that's
remember
right.
him. Yeah. Very blue eyes.
But he's a great DJ, great music, I remember the Starlight,
I was never allowed in because I was too small, so I was too good looking. If you were tall, it didn't matter if you were 14.
Pat and I just exchanged a glance there.
No, if you were 14 and tall, you got in, no problem, right? So I would be standing there, or, my friends would come up and get all dressed up in my house and put on the makeup, and then off they'd march down there and I'd be left at home drinking tea. It was terrible.
Actually, it was the rooftop. That's what the disco was called. The rooftop, I was great. And the view over Little Bray from there is amazing.
Oh, stunning.
Fantastic,
stunning,
absolutely.
But I was hoping now, I saw some scaffolding, something like that, on the Royal Hotel this week, and I thought maybe they're finally going to paint it. Which at least would be something. But if you think about it, we're supposed to be the gateway to Wicklow, and we do not have one good hotel. I know there are hotels on the seafront, but we need a first-class hotel.
Well, in fairness, I think a lot of them are housing refugees now as well.
That's
or 50-50 refugees and guests.
Yeah, because they're making a fortune out of it.
Well, of course they are, absolutely, indeed.
And of course, the courthouse, the old courthouse, the old Heritage Centre, we'll come back on this, of course, standing in front of the Royal Hotel as you come up the bridge.
That's empty now, is it?
It's completely empty.
And I want
vacant.
To start the Heritage Centre again. And I did mention it to somebody in Wicklow County Council, no names, and it was just dismissed out of hand.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that the building wouldn't be suitable. There was something wrong with it, but that was now way before now. And then they moved in small businesses, start-up businesses. So they had no problem putting start-up businesses there, but they wouldn't put the Heritage Centre. And I believe there's quite a lot of stuff from the original Heritage Centre up in the attic, stored up in the attic. I actually have a list at home of all the stuff that should be there.
Well, Shin Scale Ella, as they say, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely, Shin Scale Ella. But, just to get back to the Royal Hotel, fabulous history. And even to have the history of that inside what's now the current Royal and to give it an upgrade would be amazing. Yeah. And I'd knock down those red brick shops on the corner.
On the corner, so would I.
I'd put in a garden.
Bring back the Royal corner.
No, I think if we had an architectural competition, the aesthetics of Bray, that would probably be number 100 out of 100. That side of the place.
Sadly.
Because the rest of it, the way it curves, is quite beautiful.
Absolutely. Bring back the Royal Corner. Now, to a story that has flowed through Bray almost as long as the Dargle River itself. It affects the whole town, but especially the residents of Little Bray's Lower Dargle Road. Now, recently I met with Noeleen McManus, who lives in the area worst affected by past floods and who, in 2022, published Never Again, a collection of first-hand accounts from those who endured the major Dargle floods. And remember, there have been 4 significant flood events in 1905, 1931, 1965 and Hurricane Charlie in 1986. Now, Noeleen's full interview is available to listen to on our SoundCloud feed, which is linked in the show notes, but here's some of the overall details. Despite the €46 million River Dargle flood relief scheme completed in 2017, many Little Bray residents remain anxious. Their concern centres on plans to build on the old Bray Golf Club's second fairway. This is land that acts as a natural floodplain and safety valve when the river overflows. The OPW and Wicklow County Council scheme channels water more efficiently downstream, but in an extreme surge, the river would still spill onto those golf club lands. If houses are built there, any overflow, especially during a sea surge, could trigger a severe flooding event. As Noeleen explains, the Dargle will always follow the lowest ground, like any river. In Little Bray, that includes the area from the Slang at the Egan Centre, right down Green Park Road to Castle Street Shopping Centre, the natural river valley bordered by the Upper Dargle Road on one side and the far bank of the Dargle on the other. Noeleen and the Save Bray group are campaigning to keep the old golf course floodplain as open space. Their aim is simple. If the river overflows again, let the water go somewhere that won't put new houses at risk and reduce the pressure on properties further upstream, even if it can't eliminate flooding entirely.
Can I just ask a question? What happened to those lands during Hurricane Charlie, where the golf club's land completely, because everybody talks about the houses and the houses being flooded, but it would be a very good example of if the golf club lands had been completely flooded there, because I would think that the water table there anyway is quite high. So to build on that must be...
Yeah, well, there are photographs of a boat during Hurricane Charlie going around those lands.
Wow.
Someone caught a salmon there, apparently.
Yes. So the recent controversy and before on Commission Penola is for the next development in the Sea Gardens development down there for a Block E. Block E is going to be 16 stories and it's going to be built on the floodplain C. And the floodplain C is the one closest to where we're talking about that golf club where it was flooded. And it's right next to the River Walk or the new, the
beautiful River Walk.
Yeah. So that's 16 stories and obviously lots of concrete and whatever. Now the flood relief plan was for a 1 in 100 fluvial flood, which is like the river flood, and a 1 in 200 year tidal flood. So the question would be asked, like, so what if you had high spring tides and the river in flood as well? What would happen then?
I also think another question that could be asked, because you know that you see a lot of flooding now on the TV, whether it be, in Ireland or anywhere
Spain.
else. What is a 100-year event? Does that still exist now? Or because of climate change, has that changed? Because I certainly don't know the answer to that, but I think it would be interesting if somebody out there knew.
It's worth mentioning anyway, before we hear Noeleen here now, that her group, the Save Bray campaign, their campaign is to prevent development of the floodplain. That's their main focus at the moment. And the reason for that, of course, as I've said, and just to really explain it and hammer the point home, if the Dargle overflows, water can spread safely, reducing, not eliminating. It won't eliminate flooding necessarily in those houses, but it will reduce it in that there will be an overflow into the, as I say, the second fairway, the old second fairway of the old Bray Golf Club. And of course, as you say, Pat, it will be compounded if there's a sea surge as well. And apparently, Noeleen told me this in the interview, in drawings and photographs from before Bray Golf Club was opened there. Bray Golf Club opened there in 1897. That was an estuary. That golf club land was an estuary.
It'd be beautiful to still have an estuary there.
Yeah,
I think that would be fabulous.
Sure.
I mean,
that's not going to happen.
If anybody's walking on the prom at the moment, you could see the beach, how it's gouged out over the last few weeks from the easterly,
the power of the sea.
The power of the sea.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was thinking to myself, like, it's only a matter of maybe another year or two where they're going to have to go back at that and maybe throw more rocks or whatever, shore it up.
Which would be an awful pity, because the sand has just come back. I've never understood why they did that particular.
Well, it's to protect the prom wall.
But I think there's other ways they could have done it. But that's just me. I'm not an engineer.
So anyway, Mark, Noeleen is reluctantly came forward to present this campaign.
Well, I think she was obviously concerned, like they all were, and I think she first found her niche. She's a great speaker, and she's been on local radio and so on. And so in this short section of my chat with her, she spoke about her own personal experiences of flooding in her family home and the stress and chaos that can cause. But she's almost apologetic, as she says that her family experiences were not as devastating as many others in the area.
In 1965, we were here in the house, my dad, my mum, my sister was still out, and my brother was out. The three of us were still living at home. And we were watching television or something, and there was a knock at the door, and it was my brother at the front door, came rapping on it really quickly. And as my dad opened the door, water came in with him. And Pat was calling to say the river was overflowing and that he was going to help, because he knew my dad was here. He was going to help other young men in the area, which is what always happened, with more vulnerable neighbours. And my dad sent him off and told us to go upstairs to grab whatever we needed and go upstairs. And then there was another knock at the door, and somebody had carried my sister, who was coming home to the house, carried her across the road because already the road was too flooded and she wanted to get home. So we went upstairs, and I always remember my mum took the teapot. We had no electric kettles at the time, and there was no way of making tea upstairs, but she took the teapot and her purse. My sister took a pillow, when there were pillows upstairs, and I took a book, I think, because we were all stunned, literally. And my father started carrying stuff up, and we took it from him as much as he could upstairs. And we came down then onto the stairs and into the room, and the water was rising. I never realised till then how fast floodwaters rise when it's in a contained space. It literally was just going up the wall. Now, it stopped in our house at about a foot high. There's 21 houses in this road, but only 8 on our side. And one more house next to that before what was then the Fairgreen, now the Printworks. And it reached 4 foot at that point. I mean, you've walked up that road. You won't see the slope. That's the difference it makes. And by an hour or so later, we were upstairs looking out the top window and watching boats come up the road with people huddled in them, elderly people, children. And the boats pulled in at the opposite side of the road, where the road starts to climb towards Ravenswell. And people were brought to Ravenswell from here. From the other side of the river, they were brought to Fatima House, we found out later. I almost feel guilty telling my story because it is so small compared to what some people came through. Like David O'Neill down the road in Green Park, and he was telling us this in his story. He was saying that he was only a young fella, and he was saying he remembers, I think it was the 65 flood, watching the floodwater climbing the stairs, and his whole family upstairs and his mum. He was standing at the top of the stairs saying under his breath, go back, go back, go back, you know. And you know it won't go back until it decides, and you don't know when it's going to stop climbing. And the following morning, it was clean-up time, starting to clean up. But so many things around. Your floor is gone, the ends of your doors are gone, all the kitchen stuff is gone, and the smell in the house for a long, 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 long time afterwards, you know, and especially if you've got it up your walls and it seeped into your walls. But I mean, I was 18, I think, at the time, and it didn't hit me as hard. You know, I kind of went on with my life, was busy with my life, helped out, obviously, we all did. But my dad had the responsibility, and he was the one in charge. But when the 86 flood came, my father had died, Lord rest him, in 81. And when that flood came, my mum, she was already very, very frail. She was sleeping here downstairs because she couldn't climb the stairs. And we had a monitor on so that you'd hear if she called. I was her main carer, and I was very tired at the time. And the family agreed that I would go away for a week just to get a break. And literally I went down the road to Greystones, where a friend had a house that she hadn't yet moved into, just to, you know, relax. And that night, the night of the flood, as we found out later, some friends had come out to me, and we were down at the harbour in Greystones looking at the big waves and saying, you know, the waves are still never crossing our mind. It was August. You don't think about things like that in August. And I went home, went to bed in Greystones, and woke next morning because the alarm must have been set on the radio to the news saying that there was very bad flooding in Little Bray. And you know when you're disorientated in a strange place and think, where am I and what's happening? And then I realised, and the arrangement had been that my sister, Sally, would come down and either stay with my mum if my mum didn't feel able to go up to her house. But if she was able, she would go up and stay in Sally's house for the week, where she was always comfortable. But when I was going away, when there was any change in a pattern, like with a lot of elderly people, she became less well. So Sally was saying, don't worry, you know, if she isn't able to come up, I will stay here. Everything will be go and have a rest. So I literally didn't know whether my mother was in the house and how bad the flood was. And we didn't have mobile phones. I hit the road in spots getting home. And when I opened the door, the place was just covered in this slime and mud, but the bed was stripped. And I'll never forget the relief, the sheer relief, because the watermark on her bed was up the mattress. And almost immediately behind me, family started to arrive, and scrubbing brushes were taken out and sweeping brushes. And I always remember one of my sister-in-laws saying to me, I can't get over it that you're so calm about it. And I was saying that it's because of what could have happened. Like, that was the longest journey of my life. Sorry. It really was very, very frightening.
So Noeleen McManus there, and you can hear the trauma in her voice there, can't you? Speaking, recalling that situation. And as she says herself, she was not as badly affected by it as many others were in the area. One of the things they're looking for is to have some sort of siren, early warning system when there is a flood imminent, because the quicker you act, obviously the better. You can put up sandbags outside your door or other forms of defence. If you don't know that it's coming, you know, you're in trouble. You're in worse trouble, I think, you know. So
yeah, the huge flood relief scheme was a very, very noble effort to try, you know, correct this problem potentially, and they did a real good job on the river, trying to strengthen the pathways for salmon going up, etc. And at the very top of the river, at the apartments which are opposite the Egan Centre, there's a big tract of land over there called the Slang, and that was levelled out, and it's to be used in the event of the flood. But at the same time, some politicians are looking for that to be built on as well. You know, that, you know, there's a big tract of land, and could you not build housing on that, you know?
I suppose you can understand, right? There's two sides to the story, to be honest. Like, we're in desperate need of housing, but we're also in desperate need of understanding what's happening in our environment with climate change. And they're not mutually exclusive as far as I can see, but we need somebody to put the thinking together, don't we? Instead of thinking in isolation, we need somebody to put the thinking together.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And look, there's a lot more detail in the longer version of that interview with Noeleen, where she talks much more broadly about the issue and the back and forth and so on. And Never Again is her book, and it's available through Bray Books here in Bray, and it's accounts from people in the area who experienced the flooding.
It's a lovely book. First-hand accounts captured in the book. Very nice cover too, and available up in the bookshop, as you say, Mark.
Well, look, I think that's about all we've got time for today, unless we've got anything else to chime in with there.
That's about it.
Okay,
no,
well,
but I would ask people to please recommend us to your friends and to keep listening. And if you have any stories, will you give us an email and let us know what's happening, and let us know what you think, and let us know if you have any stories about Bray, because I'm sure there's great stories out there. I remember, does anybody remember the pagoda on the beach?
Pagoda?
Yeah,
no.
It was the building that was like a pagoda. It had the roof that came up on both sides, like that.
Oh, where Finby's is now, yeah.
Well,
Pagoda,
I believe that there
Jesus.
was many courting couple that went up there in the 70s and 80s.
The tone is starting to plummet. The tone is starting to plummet.
Oh, I didn't bring up naked saunas.
Talking about romance, if you have a good romantic story of how you met in Bray, let us know too.
Yeah, it's braytalkingheads@gmail.com. So from me, it's goodbye.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
You've been listening to Bray Talking Heads, stories from a seaside town. To contact the show, email braytalkingheads@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Blue Sky @Bray Talking Heads. Bray Talking Heads. History, stories, opinions and conversations. A podcast for Brayites everywhere.